Okay, so first we'd like to define notion. Notion is a theory or belief held by a person or group. This house is a rational actor, and the framework for this debate is this motion is too multidimensional for plain old utilitarianism. Judges, you should look for three things in your ballot. One, justice as fairness. The more just, fair side is more morally correct. Two, respect for individuals. We want to acknowledge suffering. We do not want to instrumentalize individuals as numbers or facts. Three, finally, we want to bring the most benefit to the most people, particularly just most people. In other words, utilitarianism. So now two topical case observations. One, we are not debating the merits of YOLO. We are instead debating the merits of the notion of YOLO. Two, intrinsic to the motion itself, this house regrets implies that the YOLO narrative already exists in the status quo. It is something that has existed for a lot of time, and it is not something new. So now I'd like to go to the first contention, moral correctness. Subpoint A, social cohesion. The YOLO philosophy emphasizes individual spontaneity and risk-taking without regard for future consequences. It undermines the social cohesion and collective responsibility essential for a fair and stable society. We ought to protect the liberties of all, not just the present desires of some. B, disproportionate impact. Following Rawls' difference principle, any social or economic inequality should be arranged to benefit the least advantaged members of society. The YOLO mindset exacerbates inequalities by neglecting the long-term welfare of vulnerable populations in favor of immediate gratification. YOLO is fundamentally egoist, but we ought to prioritize all of society. Subpoint C, instrumentalizing future selves. So Kant's imperative to treat humanity, whether in one's own person or in that of another, always as an end and never as a means only, questions the YOLO philosophy focus on present desires. It risks treating one's future self merely as a means to the gratification of current desires, failing to respect one's full humanity over time. Subpoint D, categorical imperative, something developed by Kant. So I just threw a ton of ethics at you. Why should you care? Even on a pragmatic level, it's because we are debating at the societal level, which means we need to consider the societal impacts. These ethical systems may seem abstract, but following them leads to real pragmatic benefits. If the YOLO principle were universalized, everyone would prefer instant gratification. To some extent, most people already do, and comparatively more do with the presence of this narrative than without. The action cannot be universalized without tremendous negative impacts, so the action itself is not good. These impacts are extremely negative, and I will go into them in some of my following points. So contention 2, harms of instant gratification. So this is contention 2. Subpoint A, what does this mean? The YOLO mindset often justifies engaging in risky behaviors under the guise of making the most out of life. This includes financial irresponsibility, unsafe sex, substance abuse, and other health-endangering activities. The immediate gratification of YOLO can result in lasting harm to individuals and burden society with increased healthcare costs and social issues. So subpoint B, long-term planning and irresponsibility. YOLO can discourage thoughtful consideration of the future. Essentially, you might gamble once for the short-term nirvana, win big, then follow this notion, you only live once, so why not do it a second time? And realistically, what's the probability of winning twice in a row on blackjack? Not very high. So you do it again, and now you have nothing. You can't afford food on the table, you can't afford housing. This is extremely impactful. If you completely follow this narrative, and tons of people do, you could end with nothing. So now contention 3, accountability. Subpoint A is avoidance of responsibility for one's actions. Individuals with a focus on instant gratification can avoid taking responsibility for their actions. The notion of responsibility conflicts with you only live once's prioritization of instant pleasure and indulgence. Therefore, people are not only making rash decisions, but because people are going off these pleasure-based rationale, are going based off of the pleasure-based rationale of these decisions, rather than a perspective of future benefits and harms, they are not going to hold themselves accountable for their actions because the rationale for them will never change. Subpoint B, lack of mental development. The YOLO mindset of prioritizing immediate desires over long-term impacts means two things. It means this. The rationale behind a person's actions will never change. This is terrible for two reasons. First, people are not growing and developing mentally. So secondly, and therefore, we are staying at the level of a YOLO mindset, which is attributable to the decision-making processes of young children, whether it be staying up all night to do video games instead of studying or eating Doritos instead of a salad. It is inevitable that success and prosperity stem from the ability to change, whether that be throughout life or throughout societal eras. The same principles and thought processes are going to have very different effects over time. To ensure that the right decisions are made, the thought behind these decisions need to adapt. Subpoint C, impact on others. Let's dissect the YOLO mindset, meaning that you only live once. Pay attention to the fact that this mindset doesn't include the lives of others. Therefore, not only is the YOLO mindset harmful to yourself, as the rest of our case explains, but it also is harmful to others. In the YOLO world, people are making decisions without considering the consequences that they have on other people. Why is this so bad? Well, the YOLO mindset harms the ability to create relationships with others. Ignoring impacts of decisions on others can foster distrust and resentment, which will impact people's ability to find friends and partners. So use this point to understand why YOLO is so harmful to one's mental health. People need to care about others to form community with others. So in a YOLO world, people are isolating themselves through their rash decisions. Now our final contention for perceptual shift. Two subpoints. Subpoint A, nature of a narrative. So I've just spent a ton of time telling you about why the idea of YOLO is bad, but why should you care with regard to the motion? Who does the motion actually impact? The narrative of YOLO causes comparatively more people to try their first cigarette, to gamble their first time, to have their first drink, and so on. It just inevitably causes people to do stuff that is bad. It excuses people for doing stuff that is bad for them, for their health. Subpoint B, young people. The notion impacts young, vulnerable people most importantly. YOLO pervades the internet. YOLO causes young people to make mistakes and to grow up too fast. At the end of the day, we are not debating the merits of YOLO, just the impacts of the narrative. It also excuses people who are already doing bad things and hinders their ability to change. For all of these reasons, I strongly urge a Gov ballot. Thank you so much.
Okay. Quick off-time roadmap before I start. I'm gonna go on to definitions, top of case, and then go into our contentions and do some rebuttaling if time allows. And I'll start my timer in 3, 2, 1. Hello, Judge. My name is Dorona Malsova, and today I'm going to be on the opposition's case in the motion that this house regrets the notion of YOLO, which we are trying to prove that this house does not regret the notion of YOLO. Okay, to start, top of case, we agree with every single thing that the Gov said on the definitions, but we do not agree with the justice and moral because this will cause clashes in the future. And generally, if we're talking about this, we're saying cigarettes are bad. Okay, yes, they are, and it will harm people. Now, this just generally does not leave us any room to debate, but we do agree with the framework that most benefit the most amount of people, which generally should not be anything because all of our contentions would still stand, and so does the government's contentions still stand. Okay, I would like to start on the top of my case. Now, within the world, a lot of people currently settle for much less than what they can achieve. YOLO attacks this. Now, our first contention includes mindset. Subpoint A is comfort zones. When people are ahead of the notion of YOLO, they step outside of their comfort zone. Example, whether it's skinny dipping in a pool or bungee jumping off a bridge, these activities make a person have experiences that open them up and take them out of the box that strangles them. When we regret the notion of YOLO, we are saying that we regret people stepping out of their comfort zones. Now, you could say that they're going to live a more comfortable life, but is this necessarily going to benefit them in the long run? Absolutely not, because they will be stuck in one exact place without doing any further achievements or benefiting anyone in the long run. Now, going on to subpoint B of development. Having the YOLO mindset actually allows one to have a constant development of themselves without being stuck in the past. An example of this is never going on a roller coaster and never actually having the experience. While when you do go on a roller coaster, then you are able to finally develop your mind into accepting that they are fun. And then once you went on a roller coaster, you are then able to become more interested in this topic of such as mechanics or how physics works and stuff like that including roller coasters, which can lead to possibility of getting jobs in this field and benefits you in the future. And this also helps them pursue their passion and furthermore increases their chances of being successful and actually living their lives with no regrets. An example of these two of people, you may say that we have no examples, but there's Beyonce and Bill Gates, who are two successful examples of people who took huge risks. For example, Beyonce was scared to drop Drunk in Love, although it turned out to be her biggest hit yet. Now, Bill Gates dropped out of college to found Microsoft. Now they make computers that we have here today and are the biggest base, and everyone knows him. And now the impact of this is that giving one room to expand their knowledge and
Go on.
yes.
Is it not true that it's much more difficult? It's much more difficult to succeed than to not succeed?
No, it's not true because people believe in the mindset that they want to better themselves. Okay, continuing on, our second contention is life. First subpoint is personal enjoyment. You need risks to live that life, whether it is deciding to move or to going on a world trip. As the motion says that you only live life once, you want to enjoy your life. The notion of YOLO boosts this idea, meaning that people are going to have a more enjoyable life and you will not have the fear of missing out, which a lot of people have right now, even teenagers and younger children, as they think that they're going to miss opportunities. While taking the YOLO motion, you are able to actually not miss opportunities because you only live once and you are able to think of this. So continuing on, our second point, subpoint around this contention revolves around present moment. The notion actually allows one to live in the present day moment, generally bringing them the happiness and them actually living their life to the fullest, as living is about experiencing. And if you don't experience, then what is the point of actually living? And it serves as a reminder of people to cherish each moment that they have and put it to use, meaning that they're going to have a better mental health and they're going to increase their productivity. Now, this leads to the third contention of motivation. Subpoint A is regular motivation. By living in a YOLO mindset, people are more likely to be motivated to try and experience things even if they fail. And this provides motivation into experiences and relationships instead of putting a label on a person and telling them that they have to follow one certain path. In addition, people that go ahead and go with these risks are previously mentioned in contention 1 are able to show other people that they are able to do what they want. And now this would, of course, motivation allows you to take risks which solve problems and make your life a whole better. Now, subpoint B is efficiency. When a person understands the notion of YOLO, they are likely to go for dreams and goals that they will likely happen because they only live once and they will take the biggest opportunity of their whole entire life. People will understand that this is their one life and strive to their goals, such as making it to the finals at the NPDL Novice nationals, like here, right? If we never actually even tried to go into this nationals, we would not be here today. By saying that we regret YOLO, this generally means that we regret development. If we are arguing that a person is developing, then the world is developing as these coincide. Saying that we regret all the development that has happened in the world, such as innovations of technology, biology, DNA, space developments, and etc. We are saying that we regret all of these that we have done now. So which judges, I'm sure, isn't true. Now, an example, like we mentioned before, is Bill Gates has made ton of advancements with Microsoft, such as the operating system plenty of people use today, meaning that he took the risks of dropping out of college and made himself into this place. Now, going on to the contentions of the government side, the first contention is moral correctness. Now, as I stated before, the framework just of morality does not leave us any room to debate. So generally, I don't think this point can stand up further, but even if you do consider it, not everything is about doing, not everything that is done following the notion ignores the future. An example of this is Elon Musk also dropping out and founding Tesla. Now, for their subpoint B, YOLO doesn't disadvantage minority groups as they will more likely strive to success and productivity because they were likely to want to become better, leading to their mental health to be better, meaning that they will generally get better themselves. Their subpoint C, YOLO philosophy ignored. They said that YOLO's philosophy ignores the effects over time. No, it doesn't, as a person will be questioning what they're doing and if they're actually living their life to the fullest, meaning that when they do question, they are able to continue their lives. Meaning, if we regret all of these developments that have happened now, how are we able to be here? No one would actually be here without the mindset of YOLO. So saying that we regret all of this means that we have regretted every single thing that has happened into our world right now. Now, their second contention of risky behaviors. They mention how there's going to be bad financial spending and then bad long-term spending, such as discourage people in the future. An example they used of gambling. So not all of YOLO's actions revolve around these risky ideas. When people are thinking with the idea of YOLO, they're thinking about what is typically best in the moment, and their ideas of discouragement in the future is extremely crazy. In addition, addictions such as gambling exist in both worlds. So if we're saying in status quo, it already exists, it's going to exist either way. So just generally saying this example does not even stand. Now, the third contention, I'm running out of time, but the third contention is accountability. They mention avoidance of responsibility, lack of mental development. Well, people are more likely to actually take responsibility because they will be going off all the rational actions that they have been taking and thinking twice because of the YOLO mindset. And then the lack of development point, people are going to develop because they will be trying to, instead of not trying at all, with the YOLO mindset, they're able to try instead of not try at all. Thank you. And with that, judges, I urge you to vote an off ballot.
Judge, do you accept off time roadmaps? Yeah, they said they did. Perfect. Then I'm just going to set my timer. Um, yeah, so I'm just gonna set my timer here. 8 minutes, I believe, right, Judge? Okay, good. So what am I'm going to go over op case first and then loop back to my gov case. So therefore, time is going to start on my first word. Okay, so with the top of case, we don't agree with their framework. And I will talk about this later, but we agree with our framework. Ultimately, this meant ultimately the complete change in decision-making process is going to have multifaceted impacts as relating to our point about disproportionate impacts in our first contention. So therefore, there needs to be a lot more depth to this. So therefore, there needs to be a lot more depth to this. So our framework is prioritizing one, justice as fairness. The more just, fairer side is more morally correct, obviously. Two, respect for individuals. We want to acknowledge suffering. We don't want to instrumentalize individuals. And third, we want to bring the most benefit to the most people. In other words, utilitarianism. So all of these things are going to shape the outlook of our case. So now I'd like to refute their first point about comfort zones. Why isn't op winning on comfort zones? 3 reasons. One, oftentimes people stepping out of their comfort zones can be negative. Judge, think about our entire first contention. Now, Gov names Beyonce and Bill Gates, but what about every little kid? And I'll take it at the end. But what about every little kid who sung in the shower or to their family and never made it? What about every kid who liked tech and now works an office job? There can only be so many singers and CEOs, but take the rest of the world as an example from our side. Two, both Beyonce and Bill Gates did not subscribe to the YOLO mindset. Both of them made decisions while factoring in their futures. They intended to make their careers out of singing and computers because they saw the success they could gain as a future consequence. YOLO is not just plain old risk taking. Judge, don't let them mischaracterize that as this. It is, as the motion defines it, it's pursuing one's desires without worrying excessively about the future consequences. And that's word for word. Not all risk taking is encompassed within YOLO, and you can step out of your comfort zone without neglecting your future well being. Three, turn this point for Gov. The people who, like Bill Gates and Beyonce, who were successful, planned their risks. They considered their futures. And then only did they leave their comfort zones. Bill Gates and Beyonce were only successful because they rejected the notion of YOLO. Now, with their second subpoint here, development, the idea of not being stuck in the past. So this is just a complete paradox, Judge. The very definition we're giving is about prioritizing future consequences. How are you stuck in the past if you're planning for the future? Again, also, furthermore, you can never, you just have to think about our point about future development here. This is an exact win for us.
You can never develop when you make the same mistakes and decisions every day. Ultimately, as people adapt, the way they make decisions needs to adapt, and future consequences is an important way of adaptation. As people get older, people are able to understand, to plan out what impact things are going to have, and that's a sign of maturity. Now, into the second contention, life. The first one is that you want to enjoy your life, that you won't have fear of missing out. Now, as we said in the first contention, YOLO isn't just all risk taking. In our world, we're not taking any risks. We're simply just looking at the future consequences. Obviously, going on a roller coaster isn't a bad thing. It doesn't have negative future consequences. So whether they gain some fun in the short term, maybe, we definitely win in the long term. Bad decision making will lead to less money and less relationships, which way outweighs one roller coaster. Furthermore, their point B about living in the present day. You can live in the present day without neglecting your future. YOLO might tell you that your life is worthwhile, but it causes you to endanger it. If YOLO is all about making your life better, then why does it promote instant gratification that destroys your life? Now, contention 3, motivation. Their subpoint A is that people are motivated by success stories like Bill Gates. Now, think about the rebuttal I just gave. Bill Gates and Beyonce are examples of people who were successful because they understood what the future held. They worked extremely hard for their futures. So again, this is just a turn for our case. Now, for point B, making people want to follow their dreams. People's dreams directly involve future consequences. People want to be an astronaut because it has positive consequences. You get a lot of fame out of it. You get to do really cool, unique things, which are positive future outlooks. Therefore, by going for this passion, they're prioritizing future goods. Turn this for us. Furthermore, OP has one major misconception with the definitions. Not all risk taking is about YOLO. YOLO is only when you neglect the future in favor of the present. And you must get this, Judge. If you are not deprioritizing the future, then you're not subscribing to this YOLO mindset. And this is extremely important to think about for the rest of the round. So now I'd like to go into their rebuttals. So they agree with our definitions. They say that the first 2 points of it, they say that they can't debate our framework. And this makes sense. This makes no sense. Why is there no room to debate, Judge? You can debate morals like you can debate utilitarianism. We should care about morals because they're prerequisite to utilitarian considerations, and the two are fundamentally linked. It's difficult to separate one from the other. Opp says that this framework causes injustices, but the framework is literally about promoting fairness and respect for individuals. How is that antithetical to justice? Unless Opp can directly attack these aspects of the framework rather than say they dislike them, this stands. Either way, we can win the round independently on our third tenet, utilitarianism, although you should value all three. Now, getting into the first tension, they say since we refuted the framework, all of our moral considerations don't count. And Judge, that long rebuttal I said just proves why this framework is important. And they really give no actual rebuttals to the points here, simply saying it doesn't count because the framework doesn't work. But clearly the framework is important. Weighing the impacts on other people are important. So therefore, the first 2 points of this contention about social cohesion and disproportionate impact go clean conceded. Now, I'd like to go on to point C. They say that you need the mindset of YOLO to be here in the future. Without it, we'd regret everything. This makes no sense, Judge. We're here as a developed human society because people made good decisions thinking about the future. Like, parents made good decisions in raising their children. People made good decisions to bring forth society. So this makes no sense. Now, our subpoint D about categorical imperative goes completely uncontested. So we're debating at the social level, which is why we need to consider societal impacts. I'm sure you already have this in your flow, but the pragmatic benefits of this must be understood. Now, for a second contention, they say that not all of YOLO revolves around risk. And I say that short-term pleasures, that risk oftentimes imply short-term pleasures. People are addicted to the thrill of risk. Short-term pleasures do involve risks. It says that in the info slide. So therefore, we've rebutted that. And our point B about long-term planning and irresponsibility goes dropped. Now, contention 3, accountability. They say that people are more likely to take responsibility because of their YOLO mindset. Not true. Take pregnancy, for example. You follow YOLO, have unprotected sex, and then you have a kid at 16. If you look at any statistic, many parents leave and do not have accountability for the child at this age. Subpoint B, lack of mental development. They say that people try with the YOLO mindset where they don't now. Why isn't op winning on the idea of trying? You can try in either world. You just try for different things. With YOLO, people might try, but they're trying for the wrong things. Now, they drop the impacts on others in C3. Do not let them respond to it. It is crucial that we consider the impacts of these things on others. Now, finally, to end off, they drop our entire contention 4 about perceptual shift. Don't let them respond to it. This perfectly explains the narrative harms of YOLO, and this is why I strongly urge a Gov ballot. Thank you, Judge.
Great speech, great speech. I now have 8 minute speech, quick off time roadmap. Going to begin top of case, figuring out that framework clash that we're currently having. Then I'm going to go gov case, then op case, and then if time permits, I'm going to do some very nice weighing at the end of my speech. With that being said, I now have an 8 minute speech beginning on my first word. Okay, to begin, I'd like to start off by addressing this framework clash that we have already stated why it should not be the framework of debate. Their framework is on justice and fairness, what is more, in other words, just the idea of what is morally correct, and also utilitarianism. The first thing that I want to point out is that this justice and fairness is this kind of whole idea. The thing is that this framework, the idea is practically just what's the best thing for one's life? What is and if we were to summarize this, their whole entire idea for framework is what is the best thing for life. And I'd like to point out that life is not always fair. Life is not always justified. So why is this being considered within the framework? In addition to this idea of kind of just like morality, utilitarianism includes some portions of morality. So I clearly do not understand here today why we are not just going with the basic set definition of utilitarianism. With that being said, I'm now going to move on into the government's first contention, which is on moral correctness. They stated kind of just how YOLO undermines the present desires of kind of undermines the desires of life and the future and things like that. They mention how YOLO disadvantages minority groups. They mention the instrumentalization of your future self, and they mention kind of just why we care about all these things. And they first started off by saying that we apparently didn't actually give a rebuttal, which actually isn't true, because not only did my partner say that these do not stand because we're going with the framework that we have chosen here today, we have also rebutted with 3 additional points. To repeat these points, my partner stated that YOLO doesn't disadvantage minority groups because they're likely to go ahead and drive. They're likely to go ahead and fight for more success and more productivity because they want to be able to get better, because they want to be able to live a better life. If they are a minority group, obviously they want to get out of this. YOLO actually assists these minority groups as it teaches them that, you know, they are able to go ahead and fight for this. They are able to take the risk to go ahead and fight for this. Now, the second point that my partner combated this with is that YOLO's philosophy is they responded to the idea kind of just like YOLO's philosophy kind of ignores the effects over time. And my partner responded to this by saying that it doesn't, because as a person, you're going to be questioning these and you're going to actually be living life for yourself. And lastly, my partner just mentioned, how can these risks affect you in huge ways? You're on the idea that you only live once. How is this going to affect, how is this going to affect you in these humongous ways? In addition, another thing that I want to mention is that not everything that is being done with the motion ignores the future. Everything that we have stated, for example, Elon Musk dropping out. In addition, that's a new example. Elon Musk dropping out and funding Tesla. Bill Gates dropping out and going ahead and founding Microsoft. Obviously, these things consider the future in very minor ways, but the thing is that these risks are much huge. They could have gone without college degrees, which would have left them without jobs. These risks are humongous, so it doesn't really make sense why this doesn't fall under the notion of you only live once. I mean, consider it here today, guys. You are going ahead and making a spontaneous decision to drop out of college. How is that not falling under the notion? Now, on to their second contention of risky behaviors, they kind of responded to this by saying that we didn't they responded to our rebuttals for their risky behaviors consenting by saying that they already rebutted that in previous times. But once again, I want to mention that these things are non-unique. Whether we have the notion of YOLO or not, these issues of gambling, these issues of drug problems are still going to exist. We can't do much about that, even if we remove the notion of you only live once. And now to their third contention about accountability. No, thank you. I have a lot to get through. To the third contention about probability, not probability, accountability, we responded with a few points and didn't have a clear rebuttal to this kind of accountability point. But in addition, they did mention things such as failure and how you are going to fail. But the other thing that I want to mention, which is going to be a big point that me and my partner are now going to start bringing up, is that you need to fail to live. Without failure, how are you going to do anything? And YOLO kind of promotes this. YOLO makes it so you are able to fail. YOLO makes it so you're able to go ahead and fall onto the curve, but then get yourself back up. YOLO allows for this. And to their fourth contention, which my partner did not get the chance to respond to, first of all, just minor thing. The whole idea of us dropping it is a very huge misconception. We just didn't get the chance to go to it. In addition, I'm going to respond to this by simply bringing up a rebuttal that I mentioned previously, which is that these things happen in the status quo. Whether we have the idea of YOLO or not, these issues such as gambling and drug problems do not come necessarily all from this idea of you only live once. Most of them actually come, especially when it comes to this idea of mental health, most of them actually come from, not mental health, especially when it comes to this idea of drug problems and cigarettes and things like that. Most of these things actually come from mental health issues that is recovered. Most of this comes from trauma that is recovered. So this point clearly is going to still happen in the status quo with or without the notion of YOLO. Now, going on to the Gov case with the remaining time that I have, to our first contention on mindset, they responded by saying that people stepping out their comfort zones isn't a good thing. And to respond to this, people have to step out their comfort zones to do anything within the world. There are going to be things that they aren't going to want to share. There are going to be actions that they aren't going to want to do. There are going to be moments within their jobs that they simply are not going to be comfortable doing. And YOLO helps them get out of this very isolating comfort zone. And they said that Beyonce and Bill Gates do not live by YOLO, but this is extremely wrong. This is simply not true. This is simply because they had a humongous risk. Beyonce, she could have had her career on the line simply because of the amount of feedback she was going to get. She was risking to get on this song, the amount of criticism that she was risking. Bill Gates, he was going ahead and he was dropping out of college, risking his whole entire education, risking his future simply because he wanted to drop out and go ahead and found Microsoft. Much hesitation goes ahead and occurs when thinking about the entire idea of risk, and YOLO still falls under this conception. Now to our second contention on life, they stated practically that we're stuck in the past and practically that YOLO apparently isn't about risk. Well, the first thing that we want to say is when you're stuck in the past, you are never able to develop. And YOLO allows people to get out of that past. YOLO allows people to develop. YOLO allows people to take risks to develop and benefit their lives. YOLO allows them to live life. Now, on our third contention on motivation, they responded to this practically by reiterating that entire point of Beyonce and Bill Gates, which I've already, butted within practically my whole entire speech. In addition, one example that I'd like to respond to the example about astronauts, right? People want to be astronauts. They're considering about the future. But let's say one person's really prioritizing being an astronaut. One person's saying, I only live once, so I want to become an astronaut. When you're going for the role of becoming an astronaut, if you're so prioritized on this, you can risk relationships, which then obviously brings risk, which then obviously, has these issues, right? But in the long run, you're going to end up trying to become an astronaut. If you aren't risk-taking when you're going with YOLO, then what is YOLO? So with the 30 seconds that I have left, a little bit of weighing. So their point about undermining life is outweighed by our point on comfortability, because this is simply if you are more comfortable in life, you're going to be willing to do more things, and you are actually not going to undermine life. This clearly outweighs on magnitude, and with my remaining time, I'd like to strongly urge the judges to vote a opposition ballot within today's debate. Thank you, and I forfeit the rest of my time.
Okay, the last speech for the opposition. A quick off-time roadmap. I don't really think it really matters that much. I'm going to be doing some weighing and then painting a picture at the end. And yeah, okay. And my time will start in 3, 2, 1. To start off, I want to weigh on the ops impacts. On our side, we have comfortability, expansion of knowledge, enjoyable life, better mental health, problem solving, and efficiency. On the gov's impacts, we have undermining life, future discouragement, lack of mental development, and impacting on others, and then young people. Now, my partner started saying with the comfortability outweighs the undermining of life. This is simply as you are going to be more comfortable in life as you are willing to do things and are not actually not going to undermine life. This outweighs on magnitude. The expansion of knowledge outweighs on future discouragement, as people are going to be discouraged if they are confident in their skills. This outweighs on scope and magnitude. We weigh on scope as when people learn new things, they can also spread this knowledge. Magnitude due to the greater world we have. Now, problem solving outweighs the point of lack of mental health development, apparently, as when people gain problem solving, they are training their brain, meaning they have no lack of mental development. The government may say that people will still be able to make choices and develop, but they won't, because people are generally scared of almost everything, which by the YOLO notion, they are able to go with this without being scared because they only live once, meaning that they are more likely to live for themselves, meaning that they're likely to increase their productivity and actually make their life better. Judges, how have people gotten here in the future? By taking risks due to people actually believing in only living once, meaning that they are able to be more productive, have a better understanding, and building relationships with others. This means that people are making decisions with risks that are benefiting our future. And one may say that the probability of being successful is low, but when you look at YOLO, people will be wanting and striving to better themselves and living with no regrets, meaning that they aren't actually ignoring the future. All examples that we gave still stand because who actually thinks about dropping out of college because they see the benefits in their future rather than just because it's hard? For instance, Bill Gates and Elon Musk, right? Now they dropped out of college not because of the fact that they saw the future and their potential in the future, but because they may have thought that college was too hard and they actually wanted to live life for the fullest. Meaning that all of these developments that they have made came from the fact that they believed in the YOLO motion. Now, continuing on, for instance, saying that we regret YOLO means that we are regretting risks that have been taken in order to make us in the place that we are here. For instance, astronomy, Newton, these people never actually thought twice for their future, but actually lived in the present day that was provided by the YOLO mindset. Living in the present day allows for people to actually better themselves and become a person that they will live with life with no regrets. And they may also, the govs may also mention how people are going to be more prone to trying their first cigarette. But this is in both worlds, in status quo and in general. So generally, this will exist no matter what. This is just part of life because people will do good if they see that they are only going to live once. If people see that they're only going to live once, they are able to strive to actually better themselves and live with no regrets and be there for themselves. And just generally saying, they also mentioned how a lot of people they would only think about themselves, right? Now, this happens everywhere because people are selfish. They're going to affect other people without thinking about it twice. Exists every single where you go because people are living their life for themselves and are only living once. So with that, judges, I urge you to vote a opposition ballot, as saying that we regret the notion of YOLO means that we are regretting every single development that has happened in our current day society, saying all these developments are just nothing and are pure waste. Thank you.
Okay. I am just getting my timer set. Okay, so just to off-time roadmap a little bit, I am going to do a little rebutting, and then I'm going to be going into some clashing and then independent ballots, and then if I have time, I'll go into some weighing at the end. So with that, my time will start in 3, 2, 1. So an observation that I noticed first is that a lot of their case is heavily dependent on these extreme irregularities like Bill Gates and Elon Musk. But judges, keep in mind, they are not average people who drop out of college. Average people who drop out of college make significantly less money than people who follow the riskless life. So do not buy any of this. They try to use this rebuttal on all of our contentions. They use it throughout their entire case. You can't buy any of this. This is an extreme irregularity. It might happen to 1 out of 1,000 people. Another rebuttal. They talk about cigarettes in both worlds. Yes, we agree. It happens in both worlds, but it happens more often in op world. Since people focus on the now, they take the instant gratification of cigarettes. They don't focus on the future health issues, the future liver and heart issues. They don't care about that. They just focus on the here and now. So it happens more in their world, and obviously it's a bad thing. So this is a queer op ballot. So now I'd like to go into some clashing. First clash, framework. So both frameworks agree on utilitarianism, and we can win on utilitarianism alone. Either way, the analysis that the other two tenets of our framework are a priori to utilitarianism goes uncontested. At worst, take those tenets as a contention or an observation and flow through our first contention in its entirety. The contention is on ethics, and the only response that we get is that we should not care about ethics. But Jack says in his speech that following ethical systems makes people behave better according to utilitarianism. If you are a flow judge, then stop listening to my speech because you already have a clean ballot with our first contention, which was effectively dropped. Clash 2, necessity of failure. So point A, ops analysis is that failure is useful and people grow from it. But that assumes that people will learn. If I decide not to study tonight because I'm only going to live once, what's to stop me from doing the same thing tomorrow and the next day and the day after that? If you universalize the YOLO narrative, then it's plain to see that at best, it only works in the small minority of instances. We are already winning on probability. So point B, throughout this round, Op talks a lot about Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and Beyonce and other famous success stories. But Jack's analysis goes unresponded to again here. He tells you that the vast majority of society who is not in some magical billionaire success story as an example for Gov case. At the end of the day, this extreme risk-taking just sets up the vast majority of people who fail. Now, why did Bill Gates and Elon Musk drop out? They did it because they had massively unusual intrinsic motivation to do this. In either world, you have Elon Musk and Newtons, and their success is totally separate from the YOLO narrative. Finally, Bill Gates and Elon Musk didn't care about their futures. They prioritized their futures, not their presents. They realized that they did not want to spend their lives wasting away at a desk, so they took a risk to prioritize their future selves. Turn all of these famous success stories as examples and offense for Gov. Now, our third clash, comparative and nature of a narrative. So we have one response. Op responds to our fourth contention and various subpoints throughout our second and third contentions with mitigation. They tell you that gambling and smoking and other bad things exist in the status quo. So why are we winning on this rebuttal alone? Two things. One, we are the status quo. I said in the first few seconds of the round, and it goes unresponded to. So yes, these issues exist in the status quo, but turn this for Gov because the YOLO narrative perpetuates these issues in the status quo. Two, Op never engages with the comparative. You are going to have these issues in either world, but just because these issues will exist in either world does not mean they will exist to the same extent. In our fourth contention, I said that you will get comparatively more gambling, more drinking, more unnecessary risks, and so on in op world, at the point where this is never contested and is incontrovertibly true. We win the round. So yes, bad things exist in either world, but Gov is the only side to quantify the difference. There will be more of these bad things in op world, so Gov side is a lesser evil. Now, two independent ballots. One is impacts on other, our contention 3 subpoint C. Judges, even if you buy none of our other points, this is the cleanest victory. It is by far the most unique point of the round. It is the only point that focuses on community rather than on the self. Even if you don't buy our framework that we provided and you buy utilitarianism, with which both of us agreed on at some point, why? Why does this still give us the win? Util is the most good for the most amount of people. We are not debating under egoism. This contention affects the most amount of people by far. It gives us a clear victory on scope. Now, the second independent ballot, young people, our contention 4. Judges, this point went conceded for a reason. You must understand that the YOLO mindset pervades the internet, social media, and other areas affecting young people. Think about our point of impact on others. This means that in their world, young people do not prioritize the impacts on others, which hurts relationships and just overall societal benevolence. However, this point about young people drastically proves our entire case. Young people will be affected disproportionately by every single issue in our case, not only affecting their lives, but also society as a whole in the future. So we win on long term, which you need to vote on. Now I'd like to weigh a little bit. What do you have on op? Maybe a bit more enjoyment, maybe feeling a bit more fulfilled. Maybe people are more motivated and more comfortable, but all that pales in comparison to the Gov case. Only looking at the drops, we are the only side to argue beyond the ego itself. We are the only side to argue everyone else. We are also the only side with a tangible impact, less bad decisions. Instead of these nebulous points that OP provides, we tangibly prevent comparatively more people from destroying their lives with gambling and other bad decisions. This is why I strongly urge a government ballot. Sorry, that was a little over time.
I be the third judge in a fast girl.
Okay, debaters, please come back. We have a decision in the final debate. Okay, congratulations to both teams for making it to the final debate. The decision in the final round of the NPDL Nationals is a 4-1 decision for the government team from Horace Mann. So congratulations, Horace Mann. I was the judge who voted for the litigation. I think just to predict what the other judges will say, I think that they viewed the question as to like what YOLO means differently from me, because I don't buy the affirmative's interpretation that YOLO means like you have to do whatever you like, pure hedonism, living purely in the moment. I'm just not buying that. And I think that the primary reason why I'm not buying it is when I want to say the member of government brings up the fact that like they quote directly from the info slide and they use the word excessively, like you're excessively ignorant of the future or something like that. And what I get from the negative team is a pretty clear, like, description of like, here's what it means to take more risks than you might normally do, but not so many risks that you are quote unquote excessive about it. So I just think that they have a better narrative in terms of like what YOLO means. And at that point, when I look at like the arguments for why YOLO is very valuable, I find the explanation really compelling from the negative, in particular this framing that like YOLO literally means like try something you've never done before and then risk falling over, risk failing at it, but then like you never would have tried that thing in the first place if not for the YOLO spirit. So I think that that's just like the clearest and easiest explanation of what's going on in this debate. I'm gonna be real. Do not understand at all what all these morality arguments do in this debate. Not clear to me from the start, not clear to me at the end. Really just seems like you are applying like previously learned methods in terms of like how you debate normally, and you're just trying to apply it in all situations. But I would encourage next time for both teams to actually just, focus on the explanations. It's like why your claims are true, right? Like why are Bill Gates and Beyonce and Elon Musk good examples of the YOLO spirit? And affirmative team on the flip side of that, right? Like why is the key detail about premarital underage sex the key detail about the condom? That's the thing that tips it over from just like bad decision making into YOLO, right? Like I don't know where these lines are in order to be able to say like this is part of what they're talking about and this isn't, because both teams are essentially like talking past each other because there's just like not enough engagement on each other's arguments. But otherwise, a good vigorous attempt from both sides. Negative team, I voted for you, but you didn't win. But I hope that you are proud of being in finals and picking up a ballot. So yeah, that's how I voted. Have a good day, everyone. I do unfortunately need to leave now.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. Am I audible? Can I be heard? Okay, great. Thank you. Hi. My name is Bali, and I voted for affirmative. And I would just like to do a succinct explanation of why I had the decision that way. I think I bought the characterization of affirmative about what YOLO means, particularly because of the characterization that opposition in and of themselves prove within the debate. Because if your example is dropping out like Bill Gates or I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg or something, it means you are doing something that is largely very, very risky and excessively out of the normal, right? So I feel then that if that's the extent of the examples that they are using to characterize their argument, then the characterization coming from affirmative is something that is justified and something that works within the debate. Moving past the characterization clash, then is on who exactly proves the harm that comes from this particular YOLO, or the benefits that come from this YOLO, and how they weigh in that particular round. I think that in terms of engagement, affirmative did do a good job in showing how YOLO means you are neglecting the future, right? I mean, and it makes you then do things that are irrational because you are like reducing the amount of fear factor that you have, and then you are taking on those risks that um might turn out to be very bad for you at the end of the day. But also, they didn't stop at the individual level. They extended it to the impact of society. You have how, from the first speaker, it makes you neglect the collective good, right? And focuses on the individual benefits in and of itself, which is something that is, from the perspective of utilitarianism, also can be bad in and of itself. So I feel like in engagement, opposition didn't really do enough because all I keep on hearing was about how like we need to care about people who wanting to do things out of normal, step out of their comfort zone and do all of this stuff. In terms of how the benefit is assured and how that particular benefit weigh above the harms that proposition provides in this debate, it was largely unclear, right? So if it's a debate about regret, and one side has benefits, one side have harms, weighing is essential, and I think proposition do that for me, and that's why I had proposition winning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Does any other judge have any RFDs? If not, then thank you guys a lot and congratulations to you guys too.
Oh, yeah. Thank you guys so much. This was an amazing round. I'm so grateful to have done this. So I wish you guys the best going forward.
Yeah, you too.
You too. Hopefully we'll see you at a tournament in the future.
Yeah.
East
Great
Coast
job.
babies,
Yeah.
Great round.
Thank you.